Tuomas, good to see you. Here
Nice
we
to be
are.
here again. It's been a while.
It has been a while, and we always talk about the worst case scenario, and here we are now. We are, I'm going to reference back to my conversation with Matt Smith. Here we are now. We are in it, right? I mean, the trade war is here. Tariffs have gone into effect, and yeah.
We're getting close. Actually, just was it yesterday or Thursday. Our warnings. We have a warning service in Genesis Economics, which basically warns on these worst case scenarios, and we added that this is what may come. That first you have the tariff wars, which have now been lit. But people are not really understanding that the situation in Ukraine is not getting better. And the Iran thing looks really scary. So I wrote about it, the economic effects of the Middle East war, and I think it was a year and a half ago, right after the 7/10 strikes. And the title of the piece was sort of Damocles, so which hangs above the world economy, basically. And so, yeah, we warned that there are like very detrimental developments that may occur just this month. And there's also like in our forecasts and historically, for some reason, the April has seen a very small increase or even a draining of market liquidity. So we warned that if these detrimental events happen, there could actually be a market collapse. Many consider this to be a collapse, but no, this is not a collapse yet. We have entered a bear market, but this is not a collapse. 2020 spring, March, that was a collapse, and we're not there yet. But we may get there soon if things go this way. And the general understanding of the lack of understanding, basically, on the how the financial flows, global financial flows affect also the U.S. market is sorely lacking. In a sense that about a little over 2 years ago, we understood that for some reason China makes these massive injections and drainings in their liquidity, which are so huge that they spill over to the rest of the economy through Hong Kong and through these other hubs through which Chinese people can react financially with the rest of the world. And so we noticed that the liquidity impulses and drainings of China also guide the U.S. market. And so now we are in April, which has usually seen a very small increase or even a draining in liquidity. So it's not a if I would have started a trade war, I would have not done it on this month. But so the point being that April can be truly horrendous for markets unless central banks start to take measures to inject liquidity, which can of course always happen. But I don't know. Beijing may not be very enthusiastic to increase liquidity, and I'm not even sure that will the Fed do that, because President Trump has been attacking Chair Powell, especially during the recent days. And so, yeah, now it seems that we started to talk about markets, but the environment is not good for the financial markets now.
What is the state in Europe currently, and the sentiment towards not only towards Americans but to President Trump?
Well, it's utterly two-sided, basically. There's these people who really champion for him and the policies. I am partly included into that group. But then there's our elite, which is not happy. They are not happy on the actions Trump has taken. So it's very schizophrenic even. Let's say that the population in Europe, which have educated themselves and do not listen to the mainstream media so much, they understand what he is trying to do or what he looks to do. But then the elite is well, they don't like what they're seeing. But I have to say that the Greenland thing it's kind of well, every one of us basically, especially in the Nordic countries, it's raising a lot of eyebrows and giving a really not good vibe. So, and I think that's that's a feeling shared among the populace and the European elite. But generally, it's very schizophrenic how Europeans see the policies of Trump. Not only also because the propaganda against him is rather heavy here.
Well, and so that was going to be my next question, because now that Europe is having to rearm themselves, prepare for stocking up their military again, which I don't know where they're going to get the labor for that. I mean, first thought that came to mind is all of these illegals. You don't call them, I don't know if you call them illegals in Europe, but all of these people, aliens that have come from all over. I mean, would that be the plan? Is to enlist them in the military?
No, they are sending the original Europeans to military. This is it's a crazy situation here. They are the immigrants, as we call them here, illegals in some cases. They are here just to hang around. It's rather insane, but it's the same thing that what happened in the U.S., especially in California and also in New York State, when the illegals arrived to the U.S. The Biden administration gave them everything for free. So the same has been happening here, and the only way to look at it is that it's an actual effort for a population shift, and you see it here too. And I don't. But what comes to actual preparation for? Well, you really cannot call it by any other term, but preparation for a war against Russia. We don't have the means for it. It's a crazy thing, and the main insane point, let's put it that way, is the fact that I don't think Kremlin is really actively looking for a confrontation. The Kremlin is looking for detente in Europe and restoration of economic ties, and so they are trying to create a boogeyman out of Russia here, which of course, well, there's, considering what has happened in Ukraine, there is some credibility in it, but the idea that Russia would start invading Europe is just ludicrous. There's no sense in it, and probably the strangest thing I have had to do during the past, I don't know, maybe 2 months or so, is to answer U.S. citizens asking me or commenting me, for example, in X, that we need to respond to the threat of Russia. There is no threat. There absolutely is no threat to the U.S. on Russia unless you make it such, which means that be aggressive and start to build your military again, more missiles. Then you will get a threat eventually, like it was during the Cold War. But I don't know. Crazy times.
I mean, you look at all this now, and how would Russia even have the bandwidth or resources to invade Europe?
No, they don't. They don't have the money. It's not the Soviet Union, which is actually an actual superpower. They don't have the funds. Of course, soon they have the military capability because European military is so weak. So in technical terms, they could do it, but what would be the point? To what end? What end would that serve? That that Russia would march over Europe. It would be highly destructive to their business model and everything else, and highly highly destructive also on the government finances. It makes absolutely no sense. And the craziest point was about just like I think last fall, when there was arguments that Ukraine has annihilated the Russian military, and now they're threatening to take to march over Europe. They were actually toting these two lines of narratives at the same time. It was such an insane moment. That NATO is great. The armed forces of Ukraine have annihilated the Russian military. Now they threaten to take over Europe. It made absolutely no sense. It was really crazy to watch it. And people, I don't know how people rationalize it, but some actually thought that this would be the case. Like some, discussions in X, for example, were like, okay, Russia is losing, but now they're threatening Europe, and the logic just escaped from many numbers of people. And if you want to get really conspirational about this, you would think that that's the idea, to make people insane. But the logic was completely lacking from that argument. But it's, they don't have the funds to run it. Soon they have the military means, sure, but no funds, no interest. And Russians do not want it. Russian people do not want this. They are not like in the Soviet times. The Soviet citizens could start to travel. Some of them could start travel to foreign countries in the 1980s, and now Russians are all over. You cannot. How do you turn? They are everywhere in Europe, and also in the U.S. and they're friendly with people from other nations. How do you turn these into these monsters that you can hate and destroy? It's a very difficult task for those who are writing the narrative, our global narrative currently.
Well, and Europe has nuclear weapons too. So what would it benefit Putin to?
Yeah, we have actually only France has her own nuclear weapons. All the nuclear weapons in UK, for example, are US made and US guided, US controlled.
So if Putin were to decide to do that and march through Europe, I mean, the consequences for that would be, or the repercussions for that would be, it'd be a dire situation. So why would he do that?
No, there is no point. He doesn't want to do that. It's just they are creating a boogeyman out of him. For example, of course, the history of Putin, he's not a good man in that sense. There's a criminal activity and corruption if you follow how he rose to power in Russia. But these are financial things, and he's not really in Russia. He's viewed like this civil servant basically, who runs things, and they just know that you should not start a movement against him because that will get you killed eventually. But otherwise, he's not viewed as a ruthless leader in that sense. So there are a lot of things here that doesn't really add up, and it's just people should be asking that why is the media perpetrating this and that or this kind of figure, and I think the answer is that we need an enemy. Like you remember when the Soviet Union fell in the 1990s, there was no enemy anymore until 9/11, and then there was the Muslims. So, and I wholeheartedly believe that the 9/11 that was a false flag or an inside job, false flag in the sense that it didn't occur as they explained it did. And so, but they need an enemy. And to unleash a global war, which would be very beneficial for certain, military industries and etc., such companies, you need an enemy. And in Europe, they have been building such an enemy from Russia. So
Where do you see this going then? Because it sounds to me, I mean, Trump is always saying, always giving the appearance that it's imminent, that we're making progress, but I don't see a lot of progress being made, and to the point where we are rearming the Ukrainians. So this continues. And so where do you see this going? And
well, currently it's not going anything towards anything good. So President Trump truly would have the means to stop the war in Ukraine in very short order. Just stop all financial and military aid to the Zelensky administration and oust him. There are other means to ousting a person than getting him killed, which is of course to what CIA has been or has trained to be very good at. But Zelensky rules on the martial law, and I'm certain that in Ukraine there is a law that says that you can change the president and then start negotiations for peace. But President Trump could do this. I think it would. I would think in a matter of, let's say, 2 weeks, we would be we would have a ceasefire. All that is required that all the support from the AFU and the Zelensky regime is removed. And switching off Starlink on Ukraine would help too. So I think President Trump started on the right path, but then something happened. Maybe domestic pressure or whatever happened, and he has been straying off that path that would lead to peace in Ukraine, and it's rather worrisome because the other option is, which I think, okay, how this is going to go is, first, Trump has been given this time window to find a solution to the situation in Ukraine through his own means. And I think the time windows closes when the mud season ends in Ukraine, which is close. So, and then maybe a major assault from the Russian side, because you need to have either a regime switch in Ukraine or you need to have the AFU to surrender. Like in 1944, July 1944, we were in a war against Soviet Union or Russia, and the Russians launched a major assault, especially in the Karelian Peninsula, and it pushed Finnish forces on the brink of collapse. And at that point, our leaders understood that we risk losing the country, and they basically raised their hands. Okay, fine. What do you want? And we changed our president from the one who actually guided us through war. We changed to a General Mannerheim, which led our forces. So they switched the president for the peace negotiations, because you cannot have the same president who has been waging war to engage in peace negotiations. So they did that, and then basically we accepted everything that the Kremlin demanded, even including denazification of Finland, which meant that we had to go to war against Nazi Germany because their troops were on our soil. And that's the option for Ukraine. The other option is that the AFU surrenders, and Russians then march to Kiev and set up their own government there, probably a temporary government which handles the transition of power, and then we go from there.
But
let me say that it's difficult to forecast what will happen now, but there are two major options, and Putin has been very, let's say, kind towards Ukraine. He had, in a sense that they haven't waged the classical total war Russia usually does when it's in an actual state of war, but because this is just a special military operation. So it is, and if he would have done that, there would have been much more Russian casualties naturally. But I think Ukraine would have surrendered already, and we would not be in this mess. And the reasons, the motives he has not done that are not clear to me. So this makes it difficult to forecast what will happen next. But I think the time window President Trump set himself is closing now, and then we enter a rather uncertain territory.
Well, and that's two things with that. I mean, would Putin really want to invade Kiev? Would they want to set up a temporary government there?
No, I don't think so. But soon they may find that is the only option. But that would naturally, because Europeans don't really want us to enter an armament race now. But if Kremlin would take Kiev, that could change the mood. But the point being here is that if we continue, if the war in Ukraine continues, it will eventually spread. So either President Trump stops it or President Putin stops it. Those are the options. If it continues, we will enter the Third World War eventually. So I'm hoping that one of these presidents will take the necessary steps to stop it. But I don't think people in US and not many even in Europe understand how critical the situation is in Ukraine, how it can spread. Because when wars start spreading, it's really difficult to stop them. So yeah, so generally I'm not optimistic on the development in Ukraine. Like you said, there are not really developments because President Trump refuses to take the necessary steps for reasons unclear to me.
Well, and people in this country, we United States, we've taken this country for granted, and we've never had any type of fight on our own soil before. I mean, outside of the Civil War.
Yeah, and what with the Mexican-Texan War, and when was it? With the Alamo and all, long time ago. But yeah, you haven't had it. Yeah, we have had two really big ones.
So people don't not to say that I sit here that I understand, but in talking to enough people, you get kind of a little bit of an idea. This is something that we don't want, and I don't know where I was going with that, but in terms of why would Trump continue this? Do you wonder if there's something bigger happening here to where?
Yeah.
Well, so where I was, Matt and I were talking about this, and he said, which I thought was interesting, is the United States trying to pry Russia away from China? Is that the bigger play here, the United States versus China?
Could be, but you're failing in it too. So if U.S. would really, say to the Zelensky government that this is it, exile, and then we start to negotiate, AFO surrenders, then you would really bow the Russians, and you could try to, get them closer together. But this strategy will only strengthen Russia and China and Iran ties. So, like I said, for reasons which are unclear to me, President Trump, for reasons unclear to me, President Trump is not following the path that could actually lead to a world peace. He is straying away from that path into a path that could actually lead to a world war. So it's I don't know. It's an intriguing question actually. Why is this happening? Who is influencing him? Doesn't he have the cojones anymore to push through these major things? I don't know. But we are converging to a path that is not good.
This episode is brought to you by Vaulted, launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. The simplest and most affordable way to own physical gold and silver. Physical gold is the only asset outside of the control of the government and banking system. They can print dollars, but they can't print gold. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike. Well, and also, Putin, he is a very serious person in terms of he's got all the leverage the way I see it right now.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, he commands the most combat-ready army in the world now. He soon has a lot of leverage because wherever Russian military goes, well, in that conflict, the situation turns in their direction or the way they want it to go. And this is something I don't think the U.S. has seen this for quite some time, but the American military hegemony is ending, and it's a development which I think, like what was you showed me the clip of your previous interview,
Matt Smith.
Yeah, no one is telling you, for example, that if Russia and China wanted, they could destroy the whole American fleet in let's say a matter of minutes, basically, and directed combined strikes to aircraft carriers across the globe. They can really do that, and that would be the end of the naval power of the U.S. Of course, that would bring upon a nuclear war, but you don't have the might anymore. And what I fear is now that President Trump, while trying to make America great again at home, he is also trying to make it great again abroad, which does not work anymore. China and Russia are they have become way too powerful. So, and they are becoming powerful still. And this includes Iran. So he's playing a very high risk poker game now with the world, I think. It is not going the way I would have liked and what I kind of hoped for when he took over. But we actually warned on these developments already in early November, like in what can come out of Iran under Trump and all this. So as we are specialized on the worst case scenarios.
Well, and so what is more dangerous to you, Russia, Ukraine, or Middle East?
Middle East, definitely, because if Middle East blows up, it will involve Russia directly, China indirectly, and the energy chaos would be unheard of. It would be utterly catastrophic to Europe and also to the US. The inflation spike would be enormous. All the talk of Fed cutting would be transferred into how much do they raise, like 100 points or whatever. Like, let's remember the last time the Middle East was in the grips of war was in 1980. And after that, Paul Walker raised the US interest rate to, was it 20 or close there? Can you imagine interest rates at 20 today? No, it would devastate a lot of things. So, like your previous guest said, that I don't think we do get a warning when something bad happens, but it's hanging in the air, and people not like we had plenty of warnings before the financial crisis, but I think now we may have none. So people should be prepared for the possibility that things escalate really rapidly.
Well, and also in regards to the Middle East, I mean, if you go after Iran, Trump is beating on the chest right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking about. I mean, are they willing to take those oil fields out, those refineries? And what kind of consequences will that have? I mean, that would push oil to $300 plus a barrel?
And the gas, even more gas comes out of the Strait of Hormuz, which and Qatar ships a lot of its exports through there. So if Iran would close that, and they completely control the Strait of Hormuz, if they close that, it's an oil chaos, but especially natural gas chaos. And if that would come to be, let's say during next fall, well, Europe would freeze, and the consequences would be enormous. And like now, we have already seen that the missile technology of Iran is very developed, and they may be really close to a nuclear weapon also. So if you like, there was when was it? It was in October, September. There was an explosion in the desert, or they said it was an explosion or a major earthquake. And it has and the experts, many of the experts said that it had the what's the word? But anyway, it resembled more of an explosion than an earthquake, which means that they would have tested a rudimentary nuclear weapon.
Well, and also with this, I mean, what do you think the future of Israel is after what's already happened and potentially what could occur? Because, and before you answer that, Gaza, rubble. Syria has fallen. Hezbollah has been, their top brass has been completely, heads basically have cut off. I can't think of the word off the top of my head right now. But so now that, they're pushing for this involvement in Iran, what do you think the future of Israel is?
What do you mean future of, like?
Well, let's say 10 years from now, because they seem to be holding, having the power right now, but you also have, you're surrounded by, Muslim countries.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think there's have you heard of the Greater Israel plan?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's what's going on here. By the way, now the sun we discussed before, it's changing things, as you now notice. It has come up. I never recorded in this room at this hour, but now I know the sun. Well,
it's okay though. It's not hitting you.
It doesn't bother me.
No, it's not hitting. No, it's fine. It's not hitting you.
Okay.
And how does Turkey?
So sorry, I just had to mention it. Yeah.
No, it's okay. How does you look good, Tuomas? You look good. Sunlight or not, you look great today. How does Turkey play a part in all this?
I don't think I have the really the knowledge to answer that, but of course Turkey is a big player here. And he's a NATO member, or she's a NATO member. So I'm just saying that the Iran-Israel conflict, which now looks to flare up, it's something that everybody should watch in very closely. So, and I remember this from I think it was the visit of Netanyahu to President Trump. I actually saw something. I heard that he had two pieces of paper, which the other one was, I don't know, there was gold or something in it, or it was golden, edge, and everybody was speculating what's in it. And when they came from the negotiations, Trump was very supportive of the cause of Netanyahu. And I can't help but to think that was it a leverage against Trump to so that he will act as they want him to act? I don't know. But these people don't generally understand that there's a lot of these power plays going on in the background. They're just people who are making these decisions, and there are many leverage points that can be pulled to influence them. And there's a lot of going on behind the scenes, and this is one question I keep pondering: that what does Netanyahu have something on Trump, or what's going on? because going after Iran it doesn't make any sense at this point. It makes zero sense. Like during his first term, you could argue that okay, fine, there is like Iran may not be able to respond, but now it definitely can. That's what it has shown with in Israel in two occasions now, and so there's a lot of things. And the other thing is that I don't think the U.S. also holds the air power it used to have against like Russia or Iran. So yeah, the point being that the U.S. hegemony, which has been there for 100 years, is crumbling, and the historical lesson of fall of empires is that they never fall without a war, either a civil war or a broader war. And worst case, U.S. will see both. Best case, nothing, and in the most likely case, probably we could say we see a global war. And the steps that the Trump administration is currently taking are unfortunately taking us into that direction. So
one of the other things when Matt and I were talking, and he brought up something that I'm going to share with you and get your thoughts. Do you think the United States has an interest in this conflict with Iran and tying it also back to China? Because Iran supplies oil to China, and this would be a long play in hurting them.
Yeah, but at what cost?
Oh, I agree with you, but just something to it was just something that I hadn't heard yet, and that's why I was curious.
Yeah, but that's a good point because China imports a lot of oil from that region. I think it's the largest oil importer. Even was it? I don't remember because it was over a year ago. The last time I looked at the figures, but there is this geopolitical play going on in the background. But my point being that President Trump said during the presidential campaign several times that he hinted on the multipolar world. And currently it is not looking that he is going into that direction. That the US will be on its own and let the rest of the world, fall whatever they may. It doesn't seem to be going that way, which worries me. What? So, and you're gonna let me add this: you cannot turn the kind of multipolar development back now. It has gone too far. So, yeah.
So you think Trump is trying to is working on keeping the United States as the global hegemony by the actions so far?
Yeah, it's the worst case scenario. Yeah, that for some reason he has turned away from the idea that the U.S. hegemony could be just given away. And the main point, what is the main reason why the war in Vietnam went on for so long? What was the main reason?
I mean, keep firing the weapons. The money people were making from that.
No, it was actually that not a single president wanted to be the president who loses that war. Pride. So can President Trump really say now that I'm the president under which command the U.S. loses its global hegemony? So, and that's everything boils down to that question. So, in the best case, after his term, the world is in a place where we have entered this multipolarity and we are living in coexisting in peace. In the worst case, he has created a setup for a global conflict through the arms race, through isolating Iran, creating conflict, or isolating China, creating conflict in in the Middle East and letting the war in Ukraine to spread. That's the worst case. And I think we are very close of deciding which road this will take. And currently it's not looking good.
You know, it's you bring up an interesting point about the multipolar world, because it appears that we're working towards that, but actions are saying also, contradicting that. And look at the Panama Canal. I mean, I talked to Michael Yan. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Yan. He's a war correspondent who's been in Panama now for a while. Yeah. And I just talked to him over the weekend, and Defense Secretary Hegseth is supposed to be in Panama, I think, next week. And, they're very serious about taking back the canal. Is that another play because they don't want to take it out of China's hands?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't, that's honestly something I haven't really looked into, the Panama Canal thing. But it's an interesting thing. And one of the kind of, again, worst case scenarios here is that what happens in Ukraine, if the UN is completely pushed aside from it, we could end up to a world of the pre-First World War world. So war before the First World War, when it was common that countries invaded areas from other countries through the through military means. And that would be a whole different world that all of us have been used to. So that's the biggest risk here, that we really take a detrimental step back where countries can just bully other countries to give up land or canals or whatever. So there's a risk of breaking of this global security structure, which has been placed since essentially since the creation of United Nations. Was it 45 or something like that? So yeah, after the fall of Nazi Germany and the fascist Japan, we may be entering in such an era, and it's it's a rude place, a rough place if we go there.
What do you think the future of the United Nations is?
I don't know. It's really difficult to say. The conflict in Ukraine I think it will define how it will, the future or the near future of UN, or even its whole future. Because if you think about what would be the institution to truly monitor the ceasefire in Ukraine, there is only one institution, it's the United Nations. No other, there's simply, all other parties are somewhat biased. And the idea that Europe would be sending peacekeeping force to Ukraine is just insane. They have been funding and providing weapons for Ukraine, and now they would be acting as a peacekeeping force. It's not a peacekeeping force. It's an invasionary force, and they will, if they would go into Ukraine, there would be, at some point there would be Russia would shoot them, or they would shoot Russia and Russian troops, and they would become directly involved, which would also imply that these European countries would become directly involved. This is there's so many little that look like little things in the media are major ones when you turn into the geopolitical game. And it's really in May, I really wanted to understand what could happen in Ukraine nuclear-wise. Could they use nuclear weapons there? And I actually built a small game theoretical model out of it, of using tactical, low yield, low fallout, or low radiation nuclear weapons. And so I understood that through the model, which is actually I published as an academic working paper, but through the model I understood that actually Russia holds a upper hand there, in the sense that they could launch tactical nukes to Ukraine, and the NATO would most likely not respond. because it would lead to a ladder of escalation leading into an actual nuclear conflict. But the thing is that there is this is also played in the background. While writing it, I was contacted by several physicists about these fourth generation nuclear weapons. I was like, what are these? I'm a nuclear physicist by training. And so they are fusion nuclear weapons, which leave a minuscule radiation trace. And we may be on the verge of entering a era of nuclear warfare also, due to the developments of these weapons. And what I hear is Russia, US are leading this research, but it's really difficult to track what is the actual state of it. But the point what I'm making here is that our whole world, our whole security structure, how do we see wars, how do we wage wars, everything can turn around in a very rapid pace. In a very quick turn of events, we may find ourselves in a completely different world, like where people are openly talking, okay, they use the tactical nukes to strike there and there. And it would be like, what? Like now everybody says, no, you cannot use nukes. And it could change also. So I'm saying that there are these a massive amount of very detrimental developments happening in the background. And all we basically need is a critical mass, which is something we cannot forecast where it is, for these events to start to roll. And then everything we have thought to be secure and sound will be completely reversed to its opposite. And if we get there, then it will test the stamina and stability, mental stability of ordinary citizens to not to respond that by pure emotions like fear and such. So in that case, if countries enter into this nuclear war, citizens will be the ones holding it together in very practical sense. Well, this is going deep into the worst case scenarios, but this is something the point I'm trying to make here, that as we are in the business of forecasting, anticipating worst case events, they are really dark at the moment. And I want people to understand this, the risks that our whole world will turn upside down are massive. And we are at the end game when we have to decide. I think during the next 5 years, we will decide what will happen during the next maybe 5 years. Are they a era where new prosperity will start to grow, or do we enter a very dark path leading to a war and global collapse? Well, I would say maybe we have just 1 to 2 years actually on that path, but still. So there are these developments. We would need to use a whole other interview to go through all these small things. But there are a very dangerous events like building in the background. They have not manifested themselves yet, but they're being built. And this is generally not understood.
Well, and I'm going to go back to that conversation with Matt again, and he said something to me, again, made me think differently. Was 2008, the GFC, how it was easy, and we didn't have these devices like we do today to be able to share information on X, and you could scare people even faster. But I think it's going to be different this time, and makes me wonder, maybe this is what Elon's role is in all this, and all the other tech bros, because they don't want them to know a lot of this, because it would terrify people. It would terrify people.
Yeah, probably. I don't have the competence to comment that, but it's possible.
But it would be reverse this time around, right? Where they would use these platforms to suppress and not allow to get information to say, all right, it's not that bad type of scenario.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that could happen. And then suddenly just everything collapses. So, and I think if you look from the economic perspective, I think the Federal Reserve has made a huge disfavor to the American populace of not letting stock markets or financial markets collapse at times. People have tied even their personalities into how they can investment, how profitable they can be, and how the stock market is growing. It's a dangerous thing. So I think we would probably be in a better place if the Fed would have let the financial system to collapse in 2020, and then we would have picked up from there.
Or even in 2008, right? I mean, because then they could have used all that.
No, but the latest 2020, we were really close off that the U.S. financial system will, crash, and Fed stepped in, and it became the U.S. financial system for a short while. It was involved in every single major capital markets, something we had never heard of. And people were just saying, okay, fine, that's their job. No, it never was their job. Never was the job of the Fed to become the lender of last resort of everybody. So that's what I mean. The people have been, and that's what now kind of links with I keep forgetting his name, the guy you said, your previous interview. Matt, yeah. So that people have been, what's the word, lulled into this false sense of security in everywhere, in the personal finances, in the world, what comes to war, peace, everything, and even the media, what it says, and in the social media, what can be said there. So in the best case, this is nothing, and we go on like, it's fine. It just happens. Small crops under there, and they're nothing. And the worst case, it just set up us. It has just set up into a massive trap.
Yeah, I can't see this just going on and everything's going to be fine. I don't even think it's a doom outlook. It's just look at what's happening. Look at what's occurring, and I mean we are in a full blown trade war now, where China has pushed back and said, is giving the United States a middle finger and saying we're not going to allow you to dictate to us how things are going to go. I mean, I just saw price of an iPhone is going to go from like $549 to 800 and something American dollars.
No, but the craziest thing I heard was that they it's on CNBC, I think yesterday. I don't remember what was the exact thing they manufactured in Vietnam and China, and it was these sun chairs. And he said that after the tariffs, their price would raise from 20 to 70, $20 to 70 because of these tariffs. That's like 300% over increase, 350. So yeah, and with the trade war now going on, people don't understand how it will affect the supply chains. I'm not sure that the White House understands either. And this is really now this might be the first actual well, not the step, but we can call it a step to an economic collapse. And we actually warned about these tariff things and this market mayhem in was it 6th of February? We explained that if these tariff things go, then bad things will start to happen. And still people I just talked to a couple of friends the other day and they're like, oh, we've been losing investments. I was like, what? Haven't you listened to anything I've said? Come on. This is obvious that this will happen. But what will come next is something that we also do not understand, that we warned our customers, especially corporations, that they need to prepare for massive breakups in the supply chains, the same way that happened during Corona times. And you have to play smart now because these chaotic changes come from everywhere. And many blame Trump, okay, some blame Putin, and we could of course we should blame the European leadership, the European Union and Commission, but it's a sign of times for some reason that we are in this chaos. And I have to say that during the past 4 years, I have read more. I've read more the Book of Revelations than I have read since ever. So you try to find answers from anywhere, basically. But yeah, it's yeah.
I was on a side note for a second. When I was in elementary school, I was on a Bible quiz team, And I've told the story a couple times. And one of the questions was, it was like you would go compete like Jeopardy, and if you answered so many questions right in a lot of time, you would be able to remove yourself from the game, and a substitute would come in, like scoring too many points. But one of the questions was, what are the 5 signs that Jesus is soon return? And I only remember, I can't remember the 5th, but I remember 4 of them. And it was large amounts of Jews returning to Israel, great wars, natural disasters, huge advancements in technology. And you look at all that, and that stuff, it's happening, but it's always been happening.
Yeah.
So that's what I think of when I think of Revelation. It's like, when this, is this biblical where we're at right now? I don't know. But also I think, we are in a very unique, exciting, and scary time, because we're in the midst of change. And this is where it's, like what you said, with, from a global hegemony to a because I think it's inevitable we're going to be going to, whether Trump, what his plan is. I don't know how we can't stay a global hegemony anymore.
No, it's gone. It's already gone.
But my question is, for people in the United States, with this tariff, because this is not going to stop on Monday. This is going to get worse. And the markets are going to, I think, and you correct me here if I'm wrong, but they're going to continue to go down.
Probably, yes. Because the liquidity has also been withdrawn, and there is no liquidity injections probably now. So this will go down probably, as long as there is no clear signal or from the central banks that they will step in, or that Trump steps back from the tariff things. And one thing, this is also, I think it was the first time the market started to fall in February. It was a much younger friend of mine, and he just started investing 2 years ago, and he was like, what's going on in the markets? What is this? And I was telling him that this is something you do not know. You cannot remember. This is a recession warning by the markets. And people have forgotten that markets also forecast when they are not completely engulfed by the liquidity from the central banks. So what I think the market signaled in February was that, okay, there's tariffs, but also that there's a recession coming. It was a sign. And now people are still talking, some analysts are still talking, will there be a recession or not? I think we should start, will there be a recession or a depression? We should talking about that. But it's I don't know, forecasting is an interesting business also, and especially nowadays when you have these like major political shifts coming, which are difficult to anticipate. But I have to say that did we talk about the peak escalation hypothesis last time? Probably not. No.
I don't recall. I don't think so.
So we built it, mostly but we built it in a matter of I think about a year from. It actually I started to envisage it in August 23, something like that, and then we published it in I think it was August 24. Peak escalation it was a worst case hypothesis, which says that there are these forces behind political leaders like the NATO deep state, the military industrial complex, which are pushing for a continuing path of escalation, which means that if there is some conflict and there's there is a peace or a detente or it freezes, it's just temporary. That these forces are seeking for continuous escalation, and we then used it in forecasting what will happen in Ukraine, what will happen in Iran, in Middle East. And this was the first worst case scenario, and it was right every goddamn time. So now it's our base case scenario. That there is these forces that try to push for this like global escalation. And it's it was like, these are the moments as a forecaster, you don't want to say that, I was correct. You was like, oh, I was correct. So then that's, you can find more of that on the peak escalation. If you just go to GNSeconomics.com or Substack, there's a lot of stuff about peak escalation. But because it works so well, and I've been doing forecasting for quite some time, first in academia and then in the business world, because it works so well, it implies that the kind of the assumption it's making are correct, which means that this global escalation is being pushed by forces above the heads of our political leaders. And it was like 62? Was it the damn, Eisenhower who
Kennedy?
was president?
Kennedy?
Yeah. What?
Kennedy? 62?
62? No, 62. No. Was it Eisenhower then? He warned about the growing power of military-industrial complex in the U.S., for example.
That was Eisenhower.
Yeah, Eisenhower. So, and these are these forces that are operating in the background, and people do not generally understand that they are there. And because they are there, because the people do not understand it, because they can operate in shadows, we're here.
What do you think?
Now the sun has taken another. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, as long as you can hear my voice.
No, you're yeah. The sun is not very bright in our conversation right now, so at least we have it on the video side for people looking. The sun is on you. What do you think? Because of what we've discussed and the fact that people, they don't want to come to grips with it, and I'm talking about it here in America, or don't understand what is happening. What will they do as they see, their 401ks, pensions, whatnot, plummet? And I mean, because my concern is, not only are people going to be pissed, but we could start to see some more civil unrest from it.
Yeah, and this is an important point. People will demand for a salvation to come, savior to arrive. And this is the biggest trap. If you do not accept the inherent nature of financial markets to go up and down, then you have only one solution: some authority who can stop them from going down, and that is the central banks, the Federal Reserve. And if they get their way, I fear we will end up in a complete dystopia where you have these central bank digital currencies and IDs, and they can really switch off your bank account like this. And this is the thing that I understand. This is a rough thing to say, but I've been studying financial crisis in the academia for 10 years and economic growth, development economics for 15 years. So I know what poverty looks like. But we have to understand that poverty is an inherent feature of freely operating economies. And if we don't have poverty, then we have misery. So freedom and poverty, that you sometimes are poor, they go hand in hand. We have to accept that. If you don't accept that, you will eradicate poverty in some sense, but you will end up in misery, because then you will live a totalitarian economic system. And when is probably the most the best way to say now, when the crisis comes, you have to understand that the suffering that comes is due to the mistakes that we have been doing since the GFC, economy-wise. And then you can decide whether you accept that, okay, you were, well, not all of you, but some of you were part of creating this mess, and now you have to pay the price and rebuild. Or do you want a savior to appear and give you your money, but take away your freedom? And that, my friends, that time is coming, I'm certain, that there will be this point when this distinction have to be made by every single adult in the US and Europe.
I think it's inevitable, and I've talked about this with other people on the show. I mean, if people don't think that the way I look at it, we already have a CBDC. We have a phone that you do everything on.
Yeah. What do you mean?
We have a phone, our iPhone, or I have an
Oh
iPhone.
yeah,
You do
yeah.
everything on that thing. That is your CBDC. It's
Oh
not
well, yeah,
officially
yeah.
it's not officially a CBDC yet, but that's where it's going. And as long as technology
You know,
can,
I have cards and cash.
but how many
How I
people?
pay.
But Thomas, how many people have that anymore?
No, not many, but I tell everybody just do not use just your phone. Have cards and cash.
I do the I'm with you. I do the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
but I watch
yeah.
people at the grocery store. They stick their hand in front of they pay with their hand.
Yeah, it's awful.
But
Yeah,
but 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 you're going to just have more and more people sign up for it, especially if
yeah.
the pain gets as severe as it does. Which I think we're on the same page of where this is heading. And we didn't even get a chance to get into the AI aspect as
Hmm?
well, because the impact AI could have. We could be on a UBI, universal basic income.
Yeah. Without freedoms robbed, basically. So
But
yeah, and I think a lot of changes will come within the next, let's say, 7 years, 10 years that many couldn't anticipate, and they may start really fast, coming. That I think the world we're living in will be rather different 3 years from now than where we are at current point. And there is a historical, well, at least since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, there has been this historical tendency that beginnings of centuries will see a massive push of pushing of the technological frontier, implying that there's a lot of technological innovations. Many do not understand that the beginning of the 20th century was the great breakthrough in physics and in many aspects, which then delivered our like smartphones and the nuclear bomb and everything that on the latter part of the century. So the actual big breakthroughs were made in the early 20th century, which then carried forward in the end. And so the AI is definitely one of those which is just started, and we need to have probably another chat about it, because we of course have worst case scenarios on that too. Which of course the worst one is that you don't have to do anything else than look at the Terminator, and you have it. So I think that's definitely a topic of another discussion. But the point being that as like one of my friends, a female, actually asked me just not many days ago, how can you constantly be in these horrible scenarios and be just fine and okay and laughing? I was just, well, training. I've been doing this for so long that I can switch off and understand that certain developments cannot be controlled. So enjoy your day today. Do what you like to do today, because we don't know what tomorrow brings. But that's a tool of a trade, and I'm kind of I have well trained of these coming events, because when you think about these worst case scenarios for living, you develop certain coping mechanisms too, which I hope many people would do, or would have. But the mainstream media, like Matt said, the mainstream media and all have done their best to not guide us into the world we may be heading, but we don't get a pre-warning. Something just happens, and
I know I'm running out of time here with you. Yeah, we do need to set up another conversation just to talk about AI. And God only knows the next time we talk, there'll be plenty of other things to talk about as well with it. So
yeah, we don't know. But I have to say at this point that I think you're doing an excellent job. I really hope that people support you on this. It is like one of the most open, if not the most open, podcast I'm currently talking in. So what you're doing is great, and I think I don't. When did you start this
it'll be
podcast?
7 years ago in September.
Yeah, I think when was the first? When was the first time I was on? It's several years ago.
Three or four now?
Yeah, and it was a smaller setup then, but now it's grown and it's great. But I really appreciate what you're doing.
I appreciate that, Thomas. One last thing I want to ask you: what's the future of Europe in your eyes?
This this depends completely what the Europeans will they wake up to the threat. I'm you know honestly the thing is that, for example, I talk about this population shift and Trump has now closed your eastern border, but our Mediterranean Sea, there's Africans keep on coming. So that's one massive threat. That Europe is turning into a playground of these dark alien plans. And just yesterday, I read that the European Central Bank plans to launch a central bank digital currency in 26, and there are already plans to force our savings into motions. For example, the rearmament of Europe. And how do you do it? Well, for example, if you have a CBDC, you can dictate the interest rate to drop them like -10 or something. So the future of Europe looks bleak. There's no other way to put it. And unless Europeans wake up what's happening in our continent, there will not be a happy ending for Europe, and it would be a tragic loss for the whole world, because we are the birthplace of the modern civilization of this era. You've been here, you've seen our cities, you've seen our culture, and if that goes, and it's a massive loss. So that's again the worst case scenario. But to be honest, it's not looking good. It's not looking really good, because we let the U.S. play us into this trap with Russia in Ukraine, so we don't have the cheap energy anymore. And then the European Commission has turned into, I don't know, it's kind of the nest of demons what they are planning, and it's not good. Don't come here but to visit.
Would you see the EU breaking up?
I hope, but I hope Hungary would probably need to start it, but it's really difficult to forecast now where European Union is going now. But it's looking horrible, utterly horrible.
Yeah, I've seen videos of Ireland, and man, Ireland is just.
Yeah, they're really does it. But that's maybe something I don't want to get into, because I live here still, and I just that is something I see it happening here, and I just okay, this is something I have tried to influence but cannot influence, so just let it be, because it's for the people, the good people of Europe now to wake up to see what's going on. The people of US already woke up, and you change your administration, but we're still deep asleep.
Where can people find you?
Well, it's GNS Economics is the company I'm leading, and then my own Substack. It's just Tuomas Malinen, Geopolitics and the Economy, and we have kind of this what's the word? Not a cloud system, but all these GNS Economics, my newsletter, are interlinked. But that's where you can find me, and on X.
Where can people financially contribute to what you're doing?
Well, the best way is to become a subscribers in Substack, either GNS Economics or my own, because then you will also become warned of the detrimental developments that we may or are likely to be heading into.
Well, and I encourage my audience. Thomas is always very courteous to come on my show, and gives a perspective on what's going on in Europe and abroad, and follow his work and support what he's doing. It's very, very important.
Well, thank you. Nice to hear. Yeah.
And as always, I appreciate our conversations, and I look forward to continuing to follow your work. And we'll see where this all goes.
Yeah, we'll do.
Mic drop.